Hello, and welcome again to this special edition of Mutual Exchange Radio. This is Alex McHugh once again. I'm interrupting our normal schedule of episodes for a special look at Russia and some of the political struggles going on there. Joining me today is Ilya, a Russian social anarchist and anti-fascist. Ilya has written for C4SS a couple of times, as well as translating some English articles into Russian. Some of these are available in the zine Dispatches from Russia, which you can buy at the C4SS store, and it's $3 a piece there for printed versions, or you can download them for free from the C4SS zine library. And you can find both of those links at store.c4ss.org. There's a link to the download as well as the option for purchasing. So with all of that said, Ilya, we have a very short bio for you on the site, in part because, Russia is not the safest place to be an anarchist. Is there anything else, though, that you want to or are able to tell us about what you do and your work promoting anarchism in Russia?
Right now, I'm working as a journalist. I write about social conflicts. I write about political situation in Russia, especially in the region where I live. Right now, I'm an activist, doing right now food on bombs in my city. And of course, I'm an anti-fascist. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I want to talk more about Food Not Bombs a little bit later in the interview, but I want to widen the focus a little bit. So I know a tiny bit about what's going on in Russia politically right now, but it might be good to start where it seems like the global media has been focused right now, which is this whole saga with Alexei Navalny, the Kremlin's attempts to shut him up, and there's been some ensuing protests, as far as I understand, in Russia. So can you tell us about what's going on with that and, what you want folks outside of Russia to know about that situation?
So briefly speaking, Alexei Navalny is a politician. He's into opposition for I think 10 years. He's a liberal, and he represents the liberal side of protest. So briefly, right now he's jailed. He got jailed for 3.5 years, and before he was poisoned, I think in Omsk. So there was a protest after it in January, 2 large massive protests, which was under the slogans for just releasing all political prisoners of Russia, releasing Navalny. It was pretty much the theme of the protest. I was just really thinking about these last days, because I don't think that Navalny, when he came to Russia, I just thought that he's going to be jailed. There's no way, because just think that's a tactical sort of mistake, because it's just Russia. It's a dictatorship. It's a Putin regime that not only just did that to just famous politician who was moving against the establishment. Before Navalny, there was a lot, more than 10 or 20 assassinations of politicians, journalists, and there was a politician, his name is Boris Nemtsov. He was killed 7 years ago in Moscow, right in the front of Kremlin.
So the next one I have is getting into what you and other, folks like you are doing on the ground. 2 pieces of yours that I found particularly interesting were the piece Coronavirus, Why Mutual Aid is Important, and your interview with Food Not Bombs activists. So can you talk a little bit about why mutual aid is such an important part of anarchist action, of activism for you, and why you wrote those pieces?
I think that mutual aid is really important for our society, our civilization, because it's what I think something really chaotic good I think that humans should do, because most of our problems in the world, and it's really local for me and other people, that everyone is just atomized. I'm just talking about my own city. People here are just really angry, I think, egoistic. They don't want to help each other, but it's not something, it's easy to help somebody, because, I don't know, even just help somebody cross the street. I don't know, just feed someone who's right now starving. It's not hard to do. So that's what should anarchists do right now, just to promote and even do the mutual aid thing, keep it going, because it's really important.
Yeah, I know in the interview piece you talk a little bit about how much people appreciate seeing you do that kind of work and, really appreciate it and understand anarchism better through those kinds of actions than anything we could say. But there's one part of that piece where I believe it was fascists attacking the Food Not Bombs setup and needing to actually defend it, which is different from my experience, right, with doing stuff like Food Not Bombs in the US, where people pretty much leave us alone. So yeah, could you talk a little bit about the challenges that you face even doing very straightforward mutual aid like this?
Yeah, so there are two difficulties with that. One, the most important, is the government, police officers just randomly passing through and in squares and stuff. And there's Nazis, because you don't know what's going to happen. You never know, just because somebody will walk down the street and see us, it's going to be a fight where somebody is going to get beaten. Me or Nazis, I don't know, just a fight. That's previously. Right now, things are quiet because I think Nazis sort of afraid to do something. Motive of that is more like not getting beaten up, but criminal responsibility. So nobody doesn't want to get jailed, because if somebody is going to or police officer is going to see that or just report, and no, I don't really know like that. Report to the police officer that this happened. So that's previously. There was a lot of accidents and assassinations of anti-fascists. The most important is Timur Kucherava assassination, happened in 2004 year. And he was a Food Not Bombs activist and musician and got killed by the Nazi.
And so now you're saying the police and authorities and all of that is more receptive to reports about Nazi activity, and they're doing stuff like actually putting them in jail and all of that.
I want to say that any Eastern country here, a police officer can detain you for nothing, literally nothing. And if they're going to see, not only that, they are just special clothing, they see the badges with. So if they will hear something about the politics, they're going to hear that this is a protest against the militarism and the government. They're just going to be pissed off, I think, even pissed off. And they can just detain everybody. And even activists who just, giving up the food for the poor, they don't care. They just start doing their job.
So they just round up whoever's there, regardless of what's happening. There's been a debate a little bit in the US because some of our police forces have started to take white supremacism, fascism a little bit more seriously, and are investigating them a little bit. It's the same problem where the investigation means increased surveillance and increased police activity, which is not good for us either. So there's the whole debate of is it good to have them taking some of these Nazis off the street, or is it really just dangerous for us as well?
I wish we had this kind of debate, because nobody's talking even about it, just because it's a really common thing. Police brutality here is just really, really common. Just I think in Greece or any post-Soviet country, because they have a lot of power. They can be violent at any time. They can just even beat somebody up, and they're not going to just get sentenced, something like that. The thing is, they still pursue anti-fascists here. It's never vanished. They never vanished, actually. a few days ago, they just, not only police, it's called FSB, just like FBI. FSB detained from 6 to 20 anti-fascists from Kaluga. It's a small city in Russia. And the thing is, they got detained because of the page in social media in Vkontakte, where reason is somebody posted music on this page, and it was qualified as extremism.
Wow.
Just for doing that. And right now, criminal cases, I think, going right now. It's going to be huge.
Damn. So just because of the music they posted, they're being called extremists. Wow.
Yeah, of course. It was two music groups, anti-fascist music groups. Yeah, the lyrics contained something really, really bad for the government.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for walking me through what the situation looks like for anti-fascists right now. The next question I have is turning back to, politics on the larger scale. And I'm wondering, so what are the political parties at play in Russia? How do they interact? How does radical or grassroots organizing factor in? And I just want to note here, folks who are interested, Ilya has a piece up on C4SS called The Russian Government's Far-Right Friends, which I found to be a really useful background on some of this. But I'll turn it over to you to let us know what's going on now.
It's a sad question because political factions and even politics is dead right now in Russia. What I'm meaning is most of the movements just didn't even exist. Some of them that existed before had large number of people in them. And right now everything is decentralized, I think. Even the Nazis, even the anti-fascists. Nobody belongs to some specific movement. Even Navalny, he's just the leader of the liberal opposition. He doesn't have a huge movement. I mean, like official movement. Don't have this. Even him, and I don't know who rules the liberals right now. I think like there's a group of people that are just liberals and social democrat people that just think they are combined, united. Even though there was a huge movement, I think everybody knows right now because of the internet, Nazballs. Everybody thinks, when I was talking with somebody, most of the people think they are dead. They don't even exist right now. But Nazballs, it was a really huge, really active movement in Russia. But right now, they don't really exist. They just do really small actions, think like pickets and stuff. About the nationalists, I think there's like only a couple of movements that exist, but they're not really large. They don't do something more than just posting something in social media. That's what they're doing right now. Just like the Nazballs, yeah. We have our own analog of Proud Boys. It's called Мужское государство. It means male state or something like that, male state. So they're just united by just hate. They really, really hate feminists. They think that right now in Russia we have a matriarchy, not a patriarchy. And they're just Nazis, actually. They're actually Nazis, most of them. They beat up anti-fascists too. There was like 2 weeks ago, somebody from, I think not only somebody, it was a group of people who beaten up the closely famous anti-fascists. I think even them, they're not like politically, they don't have their political profiles, stuff like that. They just do most of the time trolling. But the thing is, they're more real. They don't only focus on the social media. They focus on the real world. And I think they're the most largest group of nationalists and Nazis right now. But as I say, they don't have their political profile. They don't have their political capital baggage. And now the Libertarians, I think if I'm going to talk about it, it's going to be for 10 minutes. But briefly speaking, yeah, we have like 10 years ago, they, I don't know, opened 10 years ago. And previously, like 3 years ago, it was a boom. That was really, really large. But right now, it just going like they're going to pretty much close. I think, I don't know, 1 year and this moment is going to be that we have our own Libertarian Party, but because of drugs, it was a huge scandal in the party because of drugs, and I'm not going not going into details. It's a really, really huge scandal. Let's just say it's because of drugs. They got divided. Right now, there's two movements, and they both call it the Libertarian Party.
Oh, wow. Interestingly, a very similar thing happened in Brazil with libertarians who supported Jair Bolsonaro and ones who didn't, to the point where it's sort of two movements there as well, and they both pretend like the split didn't happen and they're the real libertarian movement. That's interesting that that's happening there as well.
Yeah, but let's just say, I think maximum size of the whole libertarian movement active, not only the people who support these views. I think there's 10,000 people who's actually libertarians in Russia. It's not a huge number. Yeah. Conservatives, yeah, I missed monarchists and conservatives. That's just, they should be outside of authoritarian right. I mean, I just said about the male state and the Nazis, but there's this groups of people are divided by those who pro-government, pro-Putin and stuff, and those who oppose Putin. First one is we have movement called NOD. It means National Liberation Movement, something like that. I don't know. There's a Wikipedia page, I think, which describes a lot what they're doing right now. They're pretty funny, but it's actually scary that they exist. They're just hail Putin. They believe that Russian government is occupied by the Western agents, CIA and stuff, and they believe that Putin is against these people, and he's doing his best to try and get the Russia sovereign from them, from the West. That's just the most important movement. And conservatives, monarchists are in a position, they're decentralized, they just exist as a groups of intellectuals. I think they just have their own social medias, and they don't do pretty much anything special. But I think it's a huge number of people, especially if we're talking not about young people. Of course, there's a lot of elder people. And I think it's important to note the left. The thing is, I think half of the Russian people are actually leftists, communists, social democrats too, even anarchists. Just half of the Russia. I think it's more than 72 million people. I'm just saying what the statistics says. That's just it. And the paradox is, yeah, there's a lot of people with these views, but there's not pretty much a lot of political movements. Leftists, they're too decentralized. They just exist as small groups. There's a lot of parties, unofficial, they're not registered. There's a lot of, movements too, so focused on activism. But just groups of people, not more than 100 people. Think like official Communist Party, which is registered. They're not pretty much doing anything against the regime, and like every party that is registered, because they're focused on money, not on getting the power and stuff. They're just focused on getting money from the government and just exist like that. But at the same time, they just rarely doing meetings. They do protests rarely, just to be, I think, like, let's say, discharge the situation in Russia, just to let the people protest for a little bit, but it doesn't bring any changes like most of their action, just to be populists. And that's the most largest left-wing party right now in Russia. But everybody who's, let's say, independent, they're just really, really small.
So a lot of these, ideologies are there, but not really organized or centralized or interesting. I mean, I think this is something we're kind of seeing across the world in terms of increased political fragmentization and lack of cohesion. Like there's many, many more smaller and less organized movements, it seems like, everywhere.
About Russia, the problem is everyone is unorganized because, let's say, not only decentralized, most of the people are unorganized because protests right now for the modern Russia is really rare. Because during the USSR, there was not even a huge political movement too. During the USSR, there was a dissident movement, and it contained just liberals, small groups of liberals. There was riots too, but small. And it was a strike by the workers, but they got just shooten up. That was the most famous case of USSR. But then, after the USSR collapsed, there was not pretty much anything. People are not really interested, I think, in protesting. They do find this sort of like interesting, the only way to say something to the government, just to, let's say, get through. No, this is correct. But there's no protest culture, and people don't know what to do. They don't know how to think, even what to do after they're going in the streets. They can do is just to walk and shout something, and that's the end of the political actions. Most of the people are just picketing and nothing else. We don't have even, I forgot. There's no even large trade unions, so there's a huge problem with the work because quality, let's say quality, and salaries are really low here. There's no difference between scientists' salary and the teacher. It just, I think, less than $200 for both of them, teacher and the scientist. But the people are just, they don't think like live here. They just survive. That's most of the people think about the Russia. When you don't live here, you survive, because that's just it. Even talking about the salaries, people don't do anything against it. They just sort of like, okay, they just eat in bed. They're just living somehow. Not living. They're surviving somehow. And there's no even riots because people don't want to do it. It's really depressing. Yeah, they don't know how to protest, how to just be politically loud, how to just say something that's going to hear somebody, not only just the government, but the whole city.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you're talking about this. One of my absolute favorite pieces, I guess, right now, or ideas that's floating around is, and this is particularly Peter Gelderloos talks about this a lot, but the importance of protest culture, of practicing doing this, of experiencing what it's like to stand up to a government and seeing that you can. So yeah, I mean, it really drives the point home to hear about the situation in Russia, which is that people don't have these experiences, and it leaves you in a place where people, like you said, don't know how to stand up and fight for something. I think here in the US, we have been building up a better protest culture recently. I think starting with the Occupy Wall Street movement back when that happened. And since then, I feel like we've had more of a protest culture and a better chance of, winning things by taking the streets. Yeah, I guess I'm curious, what do you think it would take to get Russians into, taking the streets and thinking? Is it a matter of meeting some of those more fundamental needs of food and shelter and all of that? Is that how you fix it? What do you think?
What's going to move people to the streets? Only hunger. That's what pretty much I think. Because people don't stand up for each other. I think even just political prisoners. Yeah, some of people, they're concerned, they worry about it, but most of the people, they don't even know what's really happening in the politics. They only care about how they're going to spend their next days. So right now the huge problem is starting with the prices for the food. Prices for everything, even not only just products, not only that. Prices are rising really, really high right now, just every month. And people are just think at some moment they're just going on to the streets. I think it's just like the same situation as the February Revolution in Russia, when everything started from the bread. And the thing is, something is going to happen right now too, like this, when people couldn't just pay for their food, just pay for their livings. And I think most important about it, not only just the reason. Russia needs really huge protest movement that is, I think, at some point it needs to be centralized, not only around Navalny. I think protests for Navalny ended up bad. Just like 2 months ago was the last huge protest. And I think for the whole country, on this protest got detained more than 10,000 people. So I think it's just a sort of like fail. Just because there's not so much people to go here. There was not pretty much people protest. And just gone bad because most of the people got detained. Even myself, I was detained too. So the problem with that is just what I'm trying to point is resources. I think let's say resources and no, not only that, also not justified, and there's a lot of sort of like losers, casualties because of that. And what will help the Russia is when large number of people are going to the street. Not only like more than 1 million of people. When this is going to happen, okay, fine. There was a huge protest in Khabarovsk that they still continue because of the rest of the local governor. People are angry because of the, know how to explain it. Let's just say briefly that there is in Russia, most of the people who live in provincial cities, regions, they hate Moscow because Moscow just centralizes the Russia. Moscow eats the budgets of the cities, and Moscow eats taxes and just leaves other cities with nothing. You know that the cities are just have our own federal budget, and just cities are giving up their money to that firstly, and then Moscow decides what to do with this money. And so the people was angry at the Moscow that, as I think, Moscow detained our governor, which we elected, and he was against the Moscow. And there was a lot of people going to the streets, even more than just this last protest for Navalny in even Moscow. It was thousands of people in Khabarovsk, but nothing changed because, the problem is there's no protest culture. They were just standing on squares and walking a lot, and nothing change because of it, but I think most importantly because not only demands, yeah, they had all the demands, but numbers. If there was more people, even in this city, I think like imagine just whole city is protest, and that was it. Yeah, of course, it could be a win, but there's another problem with the Moscow that, as we see, Khabarovsk is really far from the center of Russia. So, as the most of the, if Moscow controls everything, so the tactic is just we need a lot of people in Moscow to protest because that's the center, that's the heart of Russia. And yeah, another point is this masses. Large numbers of people need something sort of like centralized, something like not only Navalny, some movement that people can trust, because even Navalny, most of the people don't trust because of the propaganda. I think he's like a Western agent too, and stuff like that. And if some movement had been not only trained, it had their good methods to show how to protest and stuff. People would know what to do. I think like our experience is really differs with other countries. I think like let's just imagine Russia and protests in Hong Kong. It's highly organized in there, but in Russia, not. There's not even a single good movement. But thing is, yeah, I just want to say that large numbers of people plus the good movement that is going to say reflect their interests. That's what could be crucial. That's what really needed right now.
Yeah, I mean that's such a difficult thing of figuring out a way to get everyone to work together and to do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question that I had was one about what are the major struggles that folks in Russia are facing right now. I feel like kind of covered this already, but yeah, is there anything else you want to say about that?
I covered not everything that is really important. I think like there's struggle on every side. There's a lot of problems in Russia, not only just famous problem with corruption. There's even, I don't know, just somebody need is to be angry at the government, at the state. Just need to walk down the street and see how everything is not pretty good. Just like, I don't know, even roads. Roads in Russia is really a hard topic because of the quality of the roads and the number of the accidents happened on the streets. Even just like if we talk about the roads, it's a huge problem that I think like car owners, drivers, I don't know, common people should just be concerned about. Even them, streets, there's huge, as I say, problem with the work, with the even salaries. People are not satisfied with them, but they continue to work. We need huge trade union movement. I think like there's a huge problem with the not coronavirus. There's even huge with the vaccine. There's even, I don't know, just say ecology is bad too. I just looking right now at my window. There's a huge problem with the housing. It's a huge problem. The problem is it's huge criminal scheme that happens in every city when there is company that's building something. We call this buildings that is more than 10 floors. It's called multi-story building. It's called человейник. The problem is there's two ways to just live in these buildings: to buy your own apartment just for your own money, but you can share with other people. It's just sort of like looks like a cooperative, but it's just a scheme, and everybody gets goofed. Everybody gets some evil guy just gets his money and just leaves. And most of the stories are just ending up that there's only not his interest, but the government's interest in a fraud scheme. I wish I could describe the whole problem, but I'm just struggling with the words, because even I'm saying человек, it's really hard to explain. And so what I'm trying to say, it's called долевое строительство. But I don't know if there's any analog to this. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're describing as far as like ending up with way too many people in one apartment and paying too much for really crappy actual conditions. Is that what you're trying to describe?
Yeah, but not only that, I just want to tell a bit about this scheme. But I just pretty much, just hate what's happening.
Yeah. And so are you saying it's something where the builders of these buildings and the local government and whoever owns the building are like all scheming together to make a lot of money out of it while not really providing anything?
Yeah, that's it. They sort of like provide. They have their own piece of the land. They just can build something. Like right now, yeah, I'm looking out my window. Yeah, there's this like building, shared equity construction. I just googled it. It's called like that. The whole thing, buyer-funded construction. There is a huge story about even what I'm looking at. Developer can't just finish the construction, and it's happening for more than 15 years.
Oh, okay.
And people, they just wasted their money. So it's like wasted, just giving up to the developer money. And the government successfully protects not the people, it just protects somebody who is doing the same thing for years. I think the people, we don't know who's that. They're still free. They're just living their life good. And even with that, there's a huge problem that developers take the land that some of them just take land from the parks and the forests and just building a lot of, So it just brings some problems with the ecology. There's a huge problem with it itself, ecology too, with the nature, because nobody cares about nature actually. There's a lot of waste around the streets. Not only waste, let's say rubbish, garbage. And the same thing for the forests. There's two options for the forest. One, they're going to be cut down. Yeah, cut down. And that's the forest. So everything else, even just going to the shop, there you're going to find some problem which lays down to the government and or the capitalism, of course.
What was that? Did you say what was the last thing you said? Sorry.
Capitalism.
Capitalism. Yeah.
There's two huge problems, government and the capital.
Ugh. Okay, so yeah, sounds like lots of different problems, some of which I recognize, some of which sound very particular, but I'm wondering if we can hopefully turn in a little bit more optimistic direction. One of the things I really appreciate about C4SS and, the fact that we're able to have international connections like this is that, we're able to do programs like this podcast where, we talk across different countries and we run translations. So I'm wondering how, if at all, can the international anarchist community support folks in Russia right now? Like what are things that would be helpful for those of us outside of Russia to do or to know about, or wherever you want to go with it?
I think the most important right now is just the support. The most important is agitation. A lot of things that is happening. The anarchists and the anti-fascists just need to be heard. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot what people should know about the anarchist movement, anti-fascists here. So I think that's the most important support. People just should know what's happening. And I think that is going to be the most important.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope that we can continue these kinds of conversations, and that, this podcast will be a beginning of more people starting to learn about the work that you folks are doing and starting to understand what's happening in Russia a little bit more. The next thing I want to talk about briefly, so you also have a piece called Why We Should Fear Kleptocracy and Monopolism, which overall is pretty pessimistic. Like many of the things we just talked about, there's a lot of focus on all of the struggles and dangers that people in Russia are facing right now. But at the very end of that piece, you turn back towards hope and love and some optimism. And so I personally find that the politics of hope and love and joy are really important and interesting parts of the anarchist struggle, that these emotions can have strengthening effect and, really help people to stay focused and to, feel like they actually can change things. So I'm wondering, how do these emotional motivations factor into your own activism, and what are your thoughts on this sort of, politics of hope?
Let's just start with the depression. It's a huge problem here. Most of the people are just depressed, or they're really stressful, and most of the people are pessimistic. Me myself, I just be pessimistic too at some moments, because that's really common, and being optimistic, being happy here is just really rare. Let's just say that people I don't know if it's common or uncommon, people in Russia don't smile even to each other. They just they can, if you smile on the street, just show your smile to somebody. Some people would think that you're crazy because of that. Most of the people, I think, are cold. Yeah, they don't just. Most of the people aren't connected, so they don't even get connected by the bad emotions. But that's what can connect people. Just when you do something, what brings joy is what can connect people. Of course, when you just have your a band, you have your own activist movement, you have your own lot of actions like this. It just brings joy a lot. It's interesting, and you're into it because you're just feeling happy. That's what's really important for them. It's what these emotions, they're really important for any activities right now. And that's why I think people are just sort of like ignorant. They are not motivated to do anything because they don't see any joy in just being even activists. They don't, they're just not into that too. I think that's even more further, and it's a huge problem that people in Russia are unhappy with their lives, and only happiness, of course. It's that's an easy thought. I think that happiness is just most of the people want for themselves. Most of the people, of course, they want to live happy lives, but.
Yeah, so you mentioned music just now, and we were also talking earlier about a couple of anti-fascist, I think, musicians who said have been detained recently. Are there particular bands or groups that you'd recommend?
Yeah, there's that's the topic where I can just talk about too. And of course, there's a lot of bands. The Russian hardcore scene is just really, really huge. Of course, outside of Russia, most of the bands are unknown. I think if somebody is really interested in Russian hardcore music, or even just particularly anti-fascist music, people should start with the band called Provershная Lineyka. I don't know if there's a correct translation of that, but that's just what it is. It's called Provershная Lineyka. You can Google it, but anyhow, just in Russian. It was most likely one of the first Russian bands that was anti-fascist. It was a straight edge band, and it was something really unusual for the scene. When they came from nowhere, just started playing music. It was banned by the activists. They participated in a lot of direct action things. Most important one was, there's a cool story about them. In 2010, there was protests against deforestation of the Khimkinsky les, Khimkinsky forest, if you translate. And they wanted to play the music against what the state was doing. And they just canceled their gig, and people were angry, and they don't know what to do. And right after that, they actually, there was, in this riot, there was this band's members, and just like 300 anti-fascists, they just smashed the local administration, the building itself. And it was like for 10 minutes. It's literally just because of the cancelled gig and actions because of the deforestation. It was protest for nothing, just because of one band. And it's just, I can name a lot, not only Pravichna Lineyka. There's a band, anti-fascist band, Brigadier. There's a band, What We Feel, very famous band. There's Moscow Death Brigade, I don't know. Moskovskaya Brigada Смерти, it's called in Russia. These three are the most notable because they're anti-fascists. They just talk about things that just important for the anti-fascists, of course. And just Google them easily, and it's pretty much what hardcore scene looks like. For example, do you know what is chanson?
I don't think so, no.
It's a music genre. It's sort of like romantic. I know it's just like folk like genre of music.
Okay.
And there's even it's called anarcho-chanson. It's let's say reinterpretation of chanson itself. It's like post-chanson. And this music genre in Russia is inspired by the criminal aesthetics, jails and stuff. And it's just anarcho-chanson is just a combination of this and anarchism. So the people who plays this music are just talking about anti-fascist veganism and just bad cops and government. And in the language of the prisoners.
That's fascinating.
I mean, there's even huge, let's say, even subculture. There's huge subculture of the prisoners. They're called zeki, just a huge subculture of them. And their favorite genre of music is chanson, which talks about the jail stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I had no idea about this subgenre of music. I just pulled it up in another tab and I'm reading a little bit. That's really interesting.
Not only just this anarcho-chanson and not only just hardcore. We have our own electronic. There are some bands that is they just by sound they sound like Atari Teenage Riot. But they're pretty much famous. I think there's two bands that I really appreciate. It's Technopoesia, which you can translate as techno poems, and now there's Шумные и угрожающие выходки. Yeah, that's the long name. And no, there's correct translation of this. I think that's the two important bands that are anti-fascists. They talk about patriarchy. They talk about riot police too. There's a lot of notable songs. That's just I think the most important topics: cops, patriarchy, government, Putin. I should promote it with my favorite band right now. I just opened it just like a few weeks ago. It's called Nazarbayev Terror Machine. It's not talking about the Russia itself, but it's a Kazakhstan band. They're anti-fascist too. I really like them. They're just awesome because they're talking about the Kazakhstan itself, anti-fascism, and there's a singer is doing it in Kazakhstan local language. I don't know what it's called in English, but that's just it. It's awesome.
Nice. Yeah, Kazakh, I guess, is what we would call it in English.
I think, yeah.
That's really, really cool. Yeah, thanks for walking me through the music scene. I think I know we have a couple of hardcore fans. I'm a techno person myself, so I think people will really appreciate this. All right, so I'm gonna make this, I think, the last question, which is a theory question, finally. What do you think has been your biggest intellectual influence over the years, and what would you recommend that younger anti-fascists read? What do you think is important for folks to read?
For myself, I was reading over the years. It was Marek Bakhtin, and I think, yeah, that's pretty much him. I don't, let's just say, I don't really like reading. I don't really into it because I just really like to watch something, just like documentaries, short series. Reading him, yeah, it was pretty good. That was the moment when I was reading him, when I thought again for myself that I was thinking the same thing as him, and they're pretty much close. Our thoughts are the same, but he just did that in more. He just explained what I was thinking of. For the younger anarchists, for the people who are getting into this, I think it's really important to read Russian anarchists Bakunin and Kropotkin, because it's not only basis, it's not only something that is really common. That's the things, yeah, you can firstly find when you're getting into this, but it's really important, not only because of the anarchist theory itself. I know how it's in English. Kropotkin book about more like, I think, about the biology and the mutual aid. I don't know how it's called in English.
I think it's just called mutual aid in English. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how
Fine.
I usually see it.
Because it has a more longer name. Just mutual aid. Blah 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 blah. Okay, if it's called that, okay. I think it's really important. Something outstanding. It just says a lot about not only theory, just something like practical. It just shows examples of the species, just how they save up each other, how they support each other from problems, how they struggle in different way, not only in the way how Darwin described. And not only them, I think after just stuff like Bakunin and Kropotkin, I think it's really important to note David. I'm sorry if I'm not correct. David Graeber. I don't know.
Totally fine.
Just pronounce this like this in Russian. I don't know how it's correct in English. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
David Graeber and Yellows too. I think they're really important. Not pretty much the most main, I think, like concept. I think I missed up something, but yeah.
It's the full title in English is just Mutual Aid, a Factor in Evolution.
Yeah. That's how it is in Russian too.
I remember that being a really big influence on me as well. That's a really great recommendation. All right. Well, is there anything else that you want us to know, that you want to say about Russia, or that you want to say to all the listeners before we close out the interview?
I don't know, just say something for the last. Nah, just wanted to say death to the bourgeois, but nah. I just want to say free all the political prisoners in the world. Let's just end up all dictatorships. Let's just be free.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me this morning. I think this is going to come out really well, and I'm excited to share it with everyone. And thanks as well to all our listeners and supporters, especially those who have pledged support on Patreon. So I want to give a special shout out to our associate producer level supporters on Patreon. Those people are David Colborn, Derek W., Alex Gutowski, Brendan C., Curtis Ekman, Annie O'Brien, E.T., Grant Gould, Jacob Sipkin, James Tuttle, Jared Ferguson, Jason Turner, Lindsay Jane, and Tara Lane. Your support keeps this project going, and we truly appreciate our patrons at every level. If you're not a supporter of the show yet, you can head on over to www.patreon.com/c4ss.org. That's /C4SSDOTORG, and make a pledge today. So thanks so much for listening, and thanks again, Ilya.
Peace.